Today's video is brought to you by Card Kingdom, and right now you can get this Sweet Scoop Soldier sticker when you order over at cardkingdom.com. Just mention in your order notes that you want a Scoop Soldier sticker when you go to checkout. Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So as you probably know, this week we are looking at some of the sweetest but mostly untested decks from Theros Beyond Death. This is another deck from the preview stream last week on MTG Arena, and this one comes to us from a player who, when a new set comes out, you always got to keep an eye on because he's probably going to be doing something pretty spectacular, and that is Ali Eldrazi on Twitch. So this deck is Storm Breach, and this is one of the sweeter decks I've seen in quite a while, combining the power of Underworld Breach with Thousand Year Storm for a ridiculous combo deck. So a quick reminder before we break down Storm Breach for Theros Beyond Death Standard. If you enjoy this deck and you'd like to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. Oh yeah, one other thing, deck was originally played in best of one standard, so I added a pretty standard teamer sideboard for this style of deck. So sideboard not actually from Ali, but the main deck is all his. So let's talk about Storm Breach combo for standard, and combo piece number one is Thousand Year Storm. You probably know what this one does. When you cast a spell, you copy it for each other instant or sorcery spell that you had played before it during the turn. So essentially, it kind of gives all your spells Storm, only instant and sorceries, but still, everything has Storm, which allows for some ridiculous combo turns. So Thousand Year Storm has been in the format for a while, but we just got a very powerful new combo piece in Underworld Breach. So Underworld Breach is basically the finisher for this deck. Underworld Breach comes down and allows us to escape everything in our graveyard for its mana cost plus exiling 3 cards. We only get to do it for one turn, but that's fine. Our plan is to play Underworld Breach in the late game once we have Thousand Year Storm and proceed to essentially just win the game that turn by storming off and casting a bunch of spells. The last piece of this puzzle is mana production. So remember, we got to cast a bunch of spells from our graveyard with Underworld Breach. We want to cast a bunch of spells in the same turn with Thousand Year Storm. The way that we produce mana in this deck is Wilderness Reclamation, which allows us to do a pretty sweet trick. So most of our payoffs and even almost all of our card draw is instant speed in this deck. So what we can do is get down to Thousand Year Storm, get down to Underworld Breach along with a Wilderness Reclamation, and then on our end step with Underworld Breach's sacrifice itself trigger on the stack before it goes away. That's when we can combo off using all the extra mana that we generate with Wilderness Reclamation. If we stack our triggers properly, Underworld Breach sacrificing will resolve last, so we get to tap and untap all of our mana every time for as many Wilderness Reclamations as we have, which should give us enough mana to basically combo off, storm off, cast a bunch of stuff from our graveyard, and win the game on the spot. As far as actually winning the game, we got two different possibilities. The easiest and the best is Shock. So the upside of Underworld Breach is it doesn't exile cards when they leave the graveyard. For example, let's say we get down Thousand Year Storm, we get a bunch of cards in our graveyard, we have down maybe a Wilderness Reclamation for more mana, we can Underworld Breach to escape Shock. Maybe it doesn't copy at all. Maybe that's our first spell of the turn. But then, Shock, after it resolves, goes back in our graveyard. So then we can escape the same Shock again. This time we're going to get 2 Shocks because of Thousand Year Storm. Then do it again, 3 Shocks the next time, 4 Shocks the next time. So that is one of the easiest ways, and our primary plan for winning the game is to escape Shock as many times as we need to kill our opponent. Bone Crusher Giant can do the same thing, except we got to have it from our hand, because in our graveyard, Bone Crusher Giant is in creature mode. If we have a Bone Crusher in hand, though, it's basically a backup shock, so we can do all of our shocking, cast a bunch of spells, Bone Crusher Giant, get a bunch of copies, kill our opponent with storm damage. So that's the finish. These are our grape shots, essentially, for our storm deck. The other question is, how do we actually stock our graveyard and find our combo pieces? So our main plan for stocking the graveyard is cheap spells. Opt, Growth Spiral, our cheap cantripping spells, which work well with Thousand Year Storm. Like, after we have a Thousand Year Storm, we can cast some spells, we can opt a bunch of times, get a bunch of copies, draw a bunch of cards for just 1 mana. They also end up in the graveyard, so they're fueling our Underworld Breach by just putting cheap spells in the graveyard. Growth Spiral, kind of the same thing, except it also ramps us into our Thousand Year Storm. Thirst for Mania is probably the most important of the bunch. The easiest way to fill our graveyard is to get our combo pieces set up, cast a couple of ops or shocks or whatever, then cast Thirst for Meaning to get a bunch of copies, and then intentionally choose to discard 2 cards rather than discarding 1 enchantment card, that means we're going to get a ton of fuel for escaping in our graveyard, which is then going to let us cast our shock a whole bunch of times. Chemist's Insight, just backup card draw. The other sweet piece of this puzzle is Thassa's Intervention. Thassa's Intervention gives us a little bit of interaction because we can use it in counter mode. It also gives us kind of a super tutor. Maybe we don't have our 1,000-year storm yet, don't have our Underworld Breach yet. We can use Wilderness Reclamation, float all of our mana, cast Thassa's Intervention for like X10, X20, some very huge amount, which is almost certainly going to find us our combo pieces, so then we untap the next turn, play 1,000-year storm, play Underworld Breach, proceed to storm off and win the game. Otherwise, Storm Wrath, just a sweeper, buy us a little bit of time against aggro, also can hit Planeswalkers, and if we cast it post 1,000-year storm, it can't just be a hard sweeper, because we can copy it a couple times in like 8 or 12 damage to everything, should take care of our opponent's entire board, and we don't have any real creatures to worry about, just a Bone Crusher, which is mostly a spell anyway. Mana base wise, a bunch of Shocklands, Castle Vantress for some scrying action with our Wilderness Reclamations, Fabled Passage, some basic lands, a few temples as well. As far as the sideboard, Disdainful Stroke, Mystical Dispute to force our combo pieces through our opponent's interaction, a bunch more removal for aggro matchups, Fry, Scorching Dragonfire, Flame Sweep, Return to Nature gets even better with the escape mechanic in the format. We can blow up an artifact or enchantment, so a Fires of Invention, a Witch's Oven, whatever, or we can snag like a Euro or some other escape card in Elspeth from our opponent's graveyard. And that is Eliandrazi's Storm Breach for Theros Beyond Death Standard. And that's our instant deck for today. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up on all the latest and greatest, click that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to, check out some of our other sweet videos here and here.